What's your favorite scary movie?
Be like, I'm dying.
If some guy came up to me and said, "Hey, big guys," I'm like, "It's over and done. We're married now."
Someone in the movie, so I'm like, kiss. But
Oh God, what a sea of humanity.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into not a traditional episode of 52/1994. This is one of our gather around monthly episodes where we discuss movies that don't quite make our list, quite make the cut. So we want to give them their due and give some people some extra credit for watching these movies. So that's what we're doing this for. Typically, the way we do things is we're watching 52 movies from the year 1994, but every month, like I said, we have about 4 or 5 of these movies that we want to make sure and get talked about. And this month, we're talking about our topic, SNL Sucks, which means that every movie this month starred an SNL alumni, and they also weren't very good. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Cody. I am the host of 52/1994. This is your first time joining us. This isn't our traditional way that we do things. Usually I'll have a guest host on. This is kind of my open forum one where I invite anybody who wants to, who's in the Discord, to come on and hang out with me. There's an invite in the Discord for a select few people to come on here and talk if they've seen any of these movies. So if that's something that interests you and you want to get involved in talking more about movies or about the movies that we're going to be watching this year, the Discord's a great place to be. You can also find links to my socials here on Twitch, on Instagram, on Letterboxd. You can find all that stuff, and you can keep up with some of the movies, the lists that we have for these specific times that we're going to be watching these movies. So let's go ahead and kind of kick this one off. So like I said, this month we're talking about SNL Sucks. And so we've got 5 comedy movies. We're still in the middle of our comedy month of August here, although it is coming to an end. We still have a couple movies left in that. But for this month, I thought it would be good to highlight 5 films that starred former SNL members, and oh, how the mighty have fallen in these circumstances. So we're definitely wanting to talk about these. So typically I'll do a roll call. So roll call, the 5 movies that we watched this month are Cops and Robertsons, Clifford, Airheads, Exit to Eden, Cabin Boy. So 5 movies that we're sitting here talking about. And maybe some of you have heard of them. I know that a couple of these were big in my childhood. Some of these movies I'm glad that I've watched later in life, as now I feel like I can finally appreciate them. And some of these movies are just duds or have no idea what is going on in them. I did watch them all. Some of them were very difficult to find, which I'm sure we will talk about here shortly. So just kind of hanging out and talking about these movies. If you have seen any of these movies, Cops and Robertsons, Clifford, Airheads, Exit to Eden, or Cabin Boy, please let us know in the chat if you're watching. And we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know if any of these movies ring a bell for you. I know a lot of love has been shown to like movies like Cabin Boy and Clifford in later years. I know Airheads was a big deal back when I was a kid. I remember that one probably the most from when I was a child, and mimicking that movie and running around talking about that movie. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about each of these. Let's start out with Cops and Robertson. So every time when I introduce these movies, I always grab a synopsis from Google because it's there, and oftentimes it's not a very good synopsis, but I love to do that. And then I also like to go over to our dear friends over at Chat GPT, AI generated things there, and I like to tell ChatGPT to give me a tagline for each one of these movies. So Cops and Robertsons, if you don't know much about that movie, I can go ahead and tell you that this movie is about tough guy police officer Jake Stone and his less seasoned partner, Tony Moore. They're intent on taking down Osborne, a ruthless criminal. However, since Osborne is holed up in the suburbs, Jake and Tony must hold their stakeout in a neighboring house home to the Robertsons. The well-meaning family, including patriarch Norman, tries to assist the cops in their duties, but it proves to be unwanted help. This movie is given a rave review of 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is not our lowest movie that we're going to be talking about, but it is in second place, tied for second with another movie for being the worst one that we're going to be talking about. So for ChatGPT, I asked it to give me a funny tagline, and the tagline that it came up with was Cops and Robertsons, when the crime is bad and the comedy is even worse. And that, I mean, it can't ring truer than that. This movie is abysmal, a real dud, some would say. So we're sitting here talking about Cops and Robertsons, starring the SNL alum that we've got in this is Chevy Chase. Chevy kind of had an up and down career. He's done a lot of great comedies that we're all very fond of, whether it was the Vacation movies or Fletch or Caddyshack. He shows up time and time again in those movies. But then he also takes all these like really these big dips and valleys, and puts out movies like Cops and Robertsons, or he puts out movies like, some people love Funny Farm. I think it was considered a dud at the time. He did some serious acting at one point, did a couple movies with Goldie Hawn, I believe. Even like the sequel to Fletch isn't as good as the original Fletch. So this kind of rings true. This is one of Chevy's probably worst movies that he's ever been in. Oh, Nothing But Trouble. How could I forget about Nothing But Trouble with Demi Moore? That movie is pretty terrible. So if you know anything about this movie, or if you remember anything about this movie, basically Chevy Chase invites or allows these cops to come into their house to do a stakeout, and it is just stakeout in if you've ever seen the movie Stakeout, it is just stakeout in the suburbs, trying to be funny and not really succeeding. Although I do love the villain in this movie, Robert Davi, who's also one of the Fratellis in the Goonies. I felt like he was awesome as a bad guy. Jack Palance is in this movie, famous Jack Palance, who's probably most people know him from the movie City Slickers, but Jack Palance has been actor for decades before this point, and kind of, I guess, got his due with the City Slickers movie. But he's been in movies, Shane is probably one of the biggest movies that I can remember that he's been in, and he was in a lot of Westerns in the 50s. I know he went overseas for a while and kind of did and starred in some like Italian films and some French films over there. So to see him kind of show up in this as kind of strange. And I don't know if I'm like a big Palance guy. He's great in Shane. He's a great villain in Shane. But this is kind of again, how the mighty have fallen. And it looks like we have somebody tuning in here. So Chaz on the line. How's it going, Chaz?
Rock and roll.
We're not to your movie yet, Chester.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. We're talking about Cops and Robertsons, though.
Woof.
Did you watch all these movies?
I watched all of these movies except for Exit to Eden. I didn't have time.
I've got a great place where you can stream it.
Internet Archive?
No.
I did find it there.
Oh, you did? Okay,
yeah,
good.
The full movie and the full Airheads was hard to find, but it was on Internet Archive too.
I think that's where I watched Airheads, but I watched the full Exit to Eden on a xvideos.com.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
aren't you glad you paid for premium now?
I am. I'm so glad. Yeah. So I was gonna leave that in the chat and be like, if anybody really wants to watch this movie, it's gonna be in xvideos.com.
There's no website more opposite to X videos than the internetarchive.org. But they're available in both places. The only two places you can find that movie.
Oh my gosh. I do want you to watch Exit to Eden though, because I have so many thoughts on that movie.
I was interested, and I did look at Wikipedia, and there's a long Roger Ebert review in there that's worth reading out loud.
I can't
but
wait.
I did watch Cops and Robertsons. I technically watched it 3 times ish because I fell asleep during most of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Then I woke up. I was like, "Fuck!" I didn't see enough of it to know about it. Then I put it on, and immediately was on my phone. And then it ended again. I watched like the middle 2/3, and then I still hadn't paid attention, so I rewound it to halfway and let that run through.
Mhm.
And I saw enough. It was probably the worst of the 4 I watched.
Yeah, I think it's definitely bottom tier of my list for sure. There's just like some weird stuff in there, like the new cop and the daughter of Chevy Chase. Like that's weird. Like,
Weird.
Because he's an adult and she's a teenager, and he like takes her parking.
Yeah, it's not even like this kid's flirting with me and it's kind of nice. I mean, he's like into it. He's trying to like feed that flame. He has to call off. He calls out of calls sick into the stakeout and tells Jack Palance like, I can't be a cop tonight. I got to go take the teenage girl from the house we're living in out to Lover's Point. You know.
Does she even say her age at one point? I think she just says like she's old enough, she says.
I thought she was about to, but then she goes, "I'm not just a girl." And then she goes, "I'm a grown woman trapped in a girl's body," which is not saying that I'm grown. It's the opposite, really.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Didn't love it.
Diane Wiest felt like a waste in this movie.
Waste. She's so good, and she actually is doing like she does in every movie. She's doing a great job. I think Jack Palance is doing a great job. It's kind of fun to see him in that role, but there's no good jokes, so it's wasted.
No, that's the thing I've learned about these movies that we're talking about is like the jokes are like they're trying, but man, does everything miss so hard. Yeah. Like I was talking about Airheads and how Airheads, like I loved Airheads when I was a kid.
I did too. I had a lot of nostalgia for that movie.
I love that movie, and then as I sat down, like analytically, I was like, nothing is working in this movie. Like nothing is funny in this movie to me.
Oh, I might agree, but my nostalgia carried me through. I loved rewatching Airheads. But yeah, well, I'll get to what I think works about Airheads. I mean, what doesn't work about Cops and Robertsons is that there's no interesting or unique characters. There are no written jokes. It feels like in the 90s, like even adult comedies or like PG-13 comedies were kind of like kids comedies where slapstick and situational comedy was supposed to like carry you through the movie, but then nothing funny is ever said. And I like dialogue jokes. I like people being funny or acting funny. But just locking yourself out of a car in the rain is just not going to get a big laugh.
No, and like them crawling under the garage door and everything, like that just wasn't. Yeah. It felt like there was an urgency to it, and then it didn't have any payoff. Like nobody was looking at them, or
that would have
made like heard a noise or anything like that. It was just bad, and like it relied a lot on like Chevy Chase being Chevy Chase and doing his bumbling dad idiot role that he's done in everything. Specifically in the vacation movies, it's just like a rehash of that, and it's just it's almost like he's not even trying hard anymore when he gets to this film. So
no, I remember 1 minute early on when like Diane Wiest is pulling out of the driveway without the kid, and he like whispers to himself like, she's a little nutters today, and it was just very Chevy Chase, and I was like, oh, I like those little asides he can give. That's what he does well, but he doesn't really do it ever again. I thought maybe at least that would be a saving grace if he had some kind of off the wall like Chevy Chase observations about things, but he can't because that requires him to be kind of the cynical critic of the people around him, and instead he's like the bumbling center. I didn't like that I didn't care that he was a dad who just really loved cop shit, that he was into like cop movies, and
they didn't lean into that. I didn't like there was one scene where he was like investigating the guy, and I felt like they could have done a lot more with that just by making him think that he's like a cop. Oh, I've seen all these cop shows, so I know what I'm doing. And they have one scene where he goes into the house and is waving to the other house from the bedroom. Like That was like that bed scene might
almost works because that's
Yeah.
what the movie should be, and they should be doing like they should be doing bumbling, confusing things in front of the bad guy who's just constantly like, I live next to psychos, I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
But they don't. Like you said with the garage scene, if he came out and asked what was wrong or was looking through the window and they were just trying to get out of view before he showed up, and that kind of thing would have made that scene work better. But there was no real danger. Yeah,
and then it just kind of and then it just kind of wrapped up at the end really quickly with that guy, the other gangster showing up at Robert Davi's house, they're all hostages. I thought when I originally saw this movie, it was just a hostage movie, kind of like the one that we're doing this Sunday, The Ref, where it's like a burglar takes this family hostage and like the dad has to save the day. But that's not even what this movie was. Because the dad doesn't really save the day. He bumbles through a window and doesn't really do anything. Diane Weiss saves the day.
Yeah, right. She had that good moment, right? She has the gun. I forget what she says, but yeah, she gets into like Tiger Mom mode with the gun.
Yeah, it was like Ripley and Aliens. So
right, yeah,
it's a little bit like that. So, and then you get the Richter kid from Free Willy. That's
is that who that was? Yeah,
yeah.
I like the little vampire kid. I thought that was kind of funny.
Oh, that was funny. I will say the vampire kid was very funny.
Yeah,
just like peeking out of the toy box, living in their room. Like that was really good.
Yeah, totally.
Miko Hughes. That kid was on a Full House all the time as like a little shit in Michelle's class. That's what I remember him from.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know him. I was reminded of the movie today with a Twitter meme that like showed a picture of like a fully stacked breakfast table, and then like the text was like, movies in the 90s made me think like kids would just see all of this and grab one sip of orange juice and be like, bye mom. It was like, not me. I'm sitting down and eating all of that great food. And I was like, oh yeah, that happened in Cops and Robertsons at the opening scene.
Yep.
Like, I got up early and I just cooked everybody like 9 different things for breakfast. And then nobody's appreciative, and the kid's like, I'm gonna steal dad's orange juice and leave. I'm like, no, eat waffles. They're there.
Also, the criminal next door is a bad criminal because you just like, obviously it's for the humor or whatever, but like just walking into their house and being like, oh, that's Uncle so-and-so. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
he doesn't look like a cop. And then, hey, here's the daughter's boyfriend. That doesn't look like a 24-year-old man or somebody in their 20s at least that shouldn't be hanging out with a child.
He should have asked them rock and roll questions to figure out the rock and roll trivia to figure out he was a cop.
That's pretty great. I kind of wish they leaned into that in Airheads.
Yeah, a
little bit more. Let's talk about screw this movie. I hated this movie.
Okay, yeah, it's bad.
Let's talk about Airheads then. Airheads is 3 aspiring rock musicians, Chaz, Pip, and Rex. They're determined to have their band's demo tape played on air. Out of desperation, they sneak into an LA radio station, but when the manager Milo meets them with hostility, they resort to threatening him with realistic-looking water pistols. Soon the situation escalates, and the none too bright rockers get in over their heads. This movie has, I believe, a 29% on Rotten Tomatoes. So this one's second of the rating ones on Rotten Tomatoes, second highest that we have. I'm a little surprised with the other one.
Who got highest? Was it Clifford?
No, Cabin Boy.
Oh, Cabin Boy.
Yeah, people love Cabin Boy.
Here's what I'll say about Airheads. I think that there's a lot of characters in that movie, and that they all are very distinct from each other, and they all have pretty great moments. And I like that. I was surprised when I kept remembering, oh yeah, this person's in there too. This person's in there too. So I liked that. I think that they embody their characters very well. I think there's a lot of memorable bits, whether they're laugh out loud hilarious or just things that like, oh, that is a unique thing that I haven't seen in movies, or that is the thing I remember about this movie because it stood out. I remember loving to see Adam Sandler, a little less Adam Sandler in the 90s. That was cool. Yeah.
Also,
it has good pacing. I think that's awesome about this movie. Like, despite that it's like a bottled movie, like things keep happening and developments keep happening with the characters and with the situation.
I have this weird thing with Joe Mantegna, who like it's his voice. I don't know what it is. Like the way he does like inflection on certain words. I'm like, I don't know if you're trying to be cool or if you're just Joe Montana.
Yeah, he's like a New Yorker, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I
No,
like
he's
Joe
good.
Montana a lot in this movie. I love that character. The aging boomer rocker who's the DJ and has kind of lost his soul, but is invigorated a little bit. But also, like, there's a lot of good talking moments where he criticizes where music is and like what's cool about tattoos, and like he misses John Lennon, but also a pretty cool guy who hates Milo. And in the long run comes through for the rock and roll spirit. I like that there was like a middle character. They don't like movies like this don't have to have a middle character.
No,
You don't have
they
to have
don't.
hostages that are half on board, half not on board. It's just pretty easy to like keep it very simple. And this movie complicates a lot of the character dynamics in ways I liked.
While I think that like Michael McKean in this movie, Michael McKean, very funny.
Yeah.
Also SNL.
Yeah, totally.
Guy too. He's not playing a funny character. He's playing Milo, the bad character that
Mhm.
everybody hates and everything. And I kind of like that he's doing this as like not an answer to Spinal Tap, but he's totally playing against what his Spinal Tap
totally.
character would be like. So I do like that, and I feel like Michael McKean kind of goes into these, has done a lot of similar roles like this before.
I think he crushes that character, and even if he's not fun, I mean, he's straight manning, and he like, invites so many funny lines, so many funny moments. I think like I love that they're bumbling, hostage takers, but then like at little moments they get pissed, and so like the moment where he wants to like the girl wants to sit down in a chair. And then he goes, well, just because she's a woman, he shouldn't get to sit down. And they're like, well, fuck you. Everybody gets to sit in the chair. You sit on the floor. Like stuff like that invites funny moments from him. So he's very hateable. And also I think he kind of helps them plot move along where if there wasn't a Milo character around that everybody can hate more than the hostage takers, then it's like harder to imagine everybody like sympathizing with and somewhat supporting the hostage takers.
Yeah, I think my favorite person in this movie is probably Steve Buscemi's character. Like he's the one that I think had the most fun.
Yeah. He walked the middle line between Pip and Chester where he was half serious, half like kind of crazy at a partier and irresponsible. And it was funny to me, like, because there's a moment early on where like Milo gets like aggressive with somebody and he goes, hey, do you want to try that with me? Like he's the tough guy. And I'm like, you're just a little thing. But then I guess Steve Buscemi does have psychopath face, so he does seem scary.
No, I used to mimic the thing that when he goes out of the police station, one of the first or second time, and like he has his middle fingers up and he's like, yeah. I used to do that when I was 7 years old because of this movie, because Down with Authority.
They bring a lot of energy to the acting too. When they're like riling up the crowds, like it's not I don't know, it's not like close cuts of their face yelling something and then a reaction. Like they had brought a lot of energy to that set out there, which helps sell it all.
There are so many characters in this movie. It's
crazy. And a great cast too. Yeah.
I was just thinking Ernie Hudson is the cop with Chris Farley as his like lieutenant or whatever, and Chris Farley does his Chris Farley thing.
You had the worst cop who like there's like funny bits where he just ends up talking to the John Turturro lookalike about how his wife left him for the pool boy.
That's Michael Richards. That's Kramer.
That's Michael Richards, of course. He's so familiar, but I couldn't pull it. Look it up. Yeah, it's Michael Richards, and he was so good. Like he had so many little like there are obvious slapsticky moments, but I remember like the one shot where he's trying to carry all the food, crawl around on the floor, and the guy's just talking in his ear about how his wife left him, and he's just got like the big Kramer scared face. Just like one quick shot of him crawling around carrying food, just like freak the hell out. Like that was really good.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot. But I mean, it's just Michael Richards crawling in vents for 45 minutes of the movie, and then we never see him again.
Die Hard inversion. That's part of what they're doing.
You know who's not good in this movie, or I don't like in this movie, is Judd Nelson.
Oh yeah, I think he does a fine job, but yeah.
He's kind of just, I don't know. He didn't really add anything for it. We already had Milo. And I just didn't like him as much as.
Well, I do think like the third act plot is weird because it's like, we don't want a record deal. But hey, we got a record deal. Oh, wait, not with you. Well, wait, only if like Milo negotiates it. Okay, now we're in and we're so excited and we won, but only if we can play the song. But now we can't play the song. And he wants to live, like it's just like really back and forth about how this is all supposed to end up. And then it all basically gets wrapped up at the, in like a little after credit sequence or like, epilogue sequence where they're in prison
Yeah,
and
their own
they're playing rock and
prison.
roll in prison, and their first album live in prison goes triple platinum.
Again with Buscemi air humping, and then Pip being like, "Hey man, what are you doing?
Yeah.
We're in prison. You can't do that."
Adam Sandler's really funny in this.
And just cut, jacked out of his mind too, for
Yeah,
no
totally.
reason. Like shaved head and like buff Adam Sandler is.
Well, he's got the one
interesting.
shot too, where he's just holding something over his dick, and yeah, he looks
Yeah.
fucking good. Yeah,
He looks great. That was like the on my review. I was like, Adam Sandler is hot. Who knew?
One of my memories when that scene comes and he's like, playing coy while she seduces him, and he's like, I was just thinking about pools and just like being in there and spinning around like an egg.
No, I love how the bad cop, the one that's been talking on the phone with him, like learns that there's a pool guy inside.
Oh
And
yeah,
that his wife had cheated on him with a pool guy. Hands down, just I love that.
Yeah, you kind of expect too that like it would be revealed that Adam Sandler fucked his wife, but like I don't think it ever happens.
Also, I thought Brendan Fraser's girlfriend kind of sucked.
Yeah, she kind of sucks.
Yeah, I always thought it was like Christina Applegate for the longest time.
I thought that it was going to be like Joey Lauren Adams or somebody. I thought it was going to be somebody I recognized when I rewatched it, but it's not.
No, I just remember the only thing I've ever seen this person in is Crybaby, the John Waters musical with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
She's not great in that movie either, but
I mean, she looks the part, I guess.
Yeah.
I think there's like decent directing going on here. I forget. I looked up. Well, no. Wait a second. I'm thinking of Cabin Boy, where's the Letterman crew. I don't remember who directed it, but is it a name?
Michael Lehman.
Maybe not then.
He directed Heathers, Hudson
movie.
Hawk, 40 Days and 40 Nights.
Those are also movies that
tons of TV things. He directed a lot of Larry Sanders stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I don't know. It wasn't like amazing like cinematography or anything, but like little things that feel reminiscent of better movies, like seeing the journey that the thrown away tape goes through. Some of that feels like Ferris Bueller-esque. With the small space they have, they create different spaces. You feel a geography in the studio. The studio looks good. And that like really makes you feel trapped in there with those people. The club scenes, all that. Like there's a lot of really like effective movie making happening in Airheads. But I mean, nobody has to love it. I'm not like trying to like show for it like it's the best thing in the world. I have nostalgia for it, and that made me love rewatching it. But the critical hatred and it being like pushed into like a bin of a shitty movie like Cops and Robertsons was or something like doesn't feel fair. There's a lot of fun things going on here.
Yeah, it feels reminiscent of like, they're trying to capitalize on like Wayne's World, probably.
Yes,
like
that's what I was about to bring up. That this
is
feels like
our
a
audience.
Wayne's World rip off.
Yeah, and it also feels like Biodome a little bit. Like everything is just kind of in this thing. We have these idiots in here, and they're kind of holding us hostage. That's kind of what it felt like. But then like the hostages start to like the idiots.
Yeah,
so very Biodome-ish in that way too. Biodome, which is another movie that's probably not a lot of people's favorites, but I love Biodome.
Yeah, that was my favorite Pauly Shore movie when I was a kid, other than In the Army Now.
Yeah,
and I think that like it takes sincere swings at like calm moments to try to connect you, so it's not just a wacky comedy. Whether it's like a conversation about like him talking to Joe Mantegna about like where he's from, or like what he wants out of all of this. Him giving the speech about being a nerd and everybody gets behind him. His little confrontation with his girlfriend when she finally gets in the studio. Like these are meant to be little dramatic moments that make it more than just let's just have a slapsticky like rock and roll comedy. And yeah, they're not the best thing ever, but like they are somewhat effective and they are sincerely trying at those moments. He's pretty good at them.
Brendan Fraser is great.
Yeah,
I think
he brings a lot to this role because his like dumb face makes him like seem way out of his element and kind of lame, but then his like sincerity and his hair like make him seem like a rock star who wants nothing in the world but just some airtime and is going to get it.
And I mean, now he's got his Oscar for The Whale, everything, but it makes you like, what happened to Brendan Fraser between like 2004 and 2024, 22 or whatever.
Yeah.
When he
I
doesn't.
think a different timeline. We might have missed out on some pretty great Brendan Fraser.
Because even we even got like what he was supposed to do, like or not supposed to do, but with all the Mummy movies and everything, like those were good roles for him. And then it just kind of disappeared for a while. I mean, he was
might have got him a
constantly
lot of money too, and so if he wasn't sure about his own career or wasn't getting offers that he liked post Mummy, then he probably didn't have to.
Just interesting that like a Hollywood hot man, like hot guy who's actually a really good actor, kind of disappears. Like I just find it fascinating. I know this isn't like
great man in a comedy. You know, he was like he's Bradley Cooper a little bit. Like, you know, maybe not that like sexy overall or whatever, but like Bradley Cooper in The Hangover, like that could have been a Brendan Fraser kind of role. You know, he could have done a lot of that stuff and then switched over to do like little indie movies with Jennifer Lawrence. I mean, I'm not sure that timeline like matches up perfectly.
Yeah.
That could have been the course of his career. Yeah. And then he did his with Monkey Bone.
Yeah, that might have been where it all went downhill.
Monkey Bone.
But my personal favorite Brendan Fraser is the one where he lives under the ground for years. Blast from the Past.
Alicia Silverstone.
Yes, he blows on her
very well
on her knee.
But it was also like it was also the same as Encino Man in the sense that like the whole middle of the movie is just Brendan Fraser going, huh? What is this? How does this work?
He's perfect at it. He does it. But I thought he did really good in here. And he is like the straightest man of the three, of the three rockers. Yeah. Because Buscemi's crazy and Pip's an idiot. And
there's a really good spectrum in their characters between the three of them. And then you fill those gaps in with everybody else.
I definitely enjoyed watching this movie more than the other ones. Like I said, I had a lot of nostalgia for this movie.
Yeah,
it was one of those.
At the very least, this was fun to watch. Yeah.
Yes. Had a pretty clear story, like you said, and you nailed it. Is like that back and forth with the contract thing was the worst part of the movie, probably. Like the worst plot stuff anyway in the movie. So,
but there's good plotting in that, like they kind of accidentally fall into like the Dog Day Afternoon situation. And then there's good plotting of like, well, we'll just do this and then we'll be done. Oh, that doesn't work. Now we'll just do this and then we'll be done. And like, it's crazier and crazier. Now we'll have demands. Now we'll rile up the crowd. Like, you know, now we'll get on the radio and like really lean into it. And it feels kind of naturalistic how like their situation escalates kind of out of their control.
I will really say I really did enjoy the part where Steve Buscemi's just asking for ridiculous stuff on there. He's like, so we can plead insanity. Like, I think that's super funny.
Yeah, it was Pip's idea.
The football helmet filled with cottage cheese.
I always remember that, and I remember naked pictures of B. Arthur.
Oh yes, I remember the naked pictures of B. Arthur. Absolutely.
Still haven't seen them.
Nope, they exist. I know they're out there somewhere.
Yeah,
I'm sure they're on xvideos.com. RedTube. What's next? What should we talk about next? Let's talk about Clifford.
Let's talk about Clifford.
So, a little synopsis for those who haven't seen Clifford. When his brother asks him to look after his young son, Clifford, Martin Daniels agrees, taking the boy into his home, introducing him to his future wife, Sarah. Clifford is fixated on the idea of visiting a famed theme park, and Martin, an engineer who helped build the park, makes plans to take him. But when Clifford reveals himself to be a first-rate brat, his uncle goes bonkers, and a loony intergenerational standoff ensues. I did my Chat GPT thing for this. It says, when Martin Short plays a kid, insanity isn't just a plot twist, it's the whole movie.
80% of the humor in this joke is, look, Martin Short is short.
I love this movie.
I thought I loved this movie. I remember it. It's so absurd that it should be better than it is, but definitely long stretches of it I don't like.
I love Charles Grodin, and Charles Grodin is playing Charles Grodin in every movie that he's ever. Like, he just constantly has a stomach ache from the anxiety that he's going through at any given moment. I swear Beethoven's around the corner, just like waiting to slobber all over him. That's the Charles Grodin.
Always got his hands in his hair. Like,
yeah. Funny thing, this movie was filmed in 1990 and didn't get released until 1994.
That's crazy because I think
Yeah.
the movie actually looks pretty good too.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
I just learned that. It was some deal with like Orion. Orion, that company was going out of business and they were trying to save themselves and not release things that were going to lose them even more money. So
I also thought Martin Short looked kind of young.
yeah, I don't know how old he is. And I think he's like 37 maybe in this movie, maybe 35. I don't know. And Charles
Again, I
Grodin.
think this movie needed more. It needed to be more unique, and it needed more wackiness. Because I think there are a lot of stretches where, like, okay, well, I'm over that it's Martin Short as the kid. So what makes like this 10-minute sequence different from Dennis the Menace and Problem Child? Like, I don't know. Like, that's kind of an annoying concept to me. To like, just watching a bratty kid be bratty is kind of annoying over and over again. And it should be made better because it's Martin Short instead of a real kid. But they didn't take the time to do that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not a big fan of slapstick unless you really go somewhere I haven't surprised me with it, and nothing was surprising. So that's a lot of this stuff too.
I just remember him. No, I just loved all the antics, I guess, that Martin Short's Clifford does, whether it's the hot sauce. I remember the hot sauce and the Bloody Mary. I remember him not getting on the train and sending Charles Grodin's character to San Francisco. Like, those were big things that I couldn't expect a child to do. But I guess you're right in the same sense of like Problem Child. Like, that kid's a menace too, to deal with. But there's just the facial expressions that Martin Short is capable of that a child actor is not capable of.
And there are little moments. I wish I had written down a couple lines, but there are little line deliveries where like he feels really Martin Short like, and he seems entirely evil and smarter than a little kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I like those little lines. But I got annoyed. I get annoyed halfway through the movie with him being like, I think it'd be really the bestest thing ever. Like, he's just doing like a little kid impression the whole time, and like, and I don't know, he needed to make like a demon voice or like a show that he's like smarter than an average kid or something. So it is him being in that like voice character the whole time grated on me. I think I saw this in like middle or high school. Maybe if I grew up with it, I think I would like the hot sauce as the Bloody Mary kind of stuff a bit more.
The only thing I'll say about I looked it up, by the way. He was 34 and Charles Grodin was 55 in this movie.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Martin Short is getting talked to by his Uncle Martin. It's somewhere probably in the middle of the movie, maybe towards the back half. And he's like, can't you just pretend to be a real boy for just like 1 second? Look at you. You can't even look at me for 1 second. And like Martin Short is doing these faces at him. And he's like, oh my God, I wish I could replicate it. But it's my favorite scene in the entire movie. Just because of Martin Short and the faces that he does.
I mean, that's what he's best at or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I just kept thinking about him, like all the other things he's been in. Doesn't he play, what does he play in Arrested Development? Is it not Jack Palance?
It is a Jack Palance-like guy, yeah.
Yeah, I thought like his name even is very similar.
Uncle Jack, I think it is Uncle Jack in that movie.
Yeah, and his last name I think might be Palance. Like I don't know, but yeah, like you think about more adult things he does, and I think about Jiminy Glick, who I love. Like he is silly, and his face is silly, and his voice is silly, and then sometimes the stuff he says is just like between two ferns biting satire, you know, like. And so I guess I wanted a little more of that underneath the silliness. Like there's a whole different other level of humor coming from it, but certainly made a unique movie, and I think it's what's made it so memorable and beloved for a while. People do love this movie a lot.
We get a young Ben Savage in this movie, pre Boy Meets World,
doing his doing what his older brother did in Princess Bride, being part of a frame tale,
and also trying to convince me that he's like a bad kid, and I'm like, Ben Savage, you're not a bad kid.
Come on, we know
you're not. Yeah, Corey, you're no Sean.
You're not a Sean.
You're not a Sean.
Totally. I actually, maybe it's because I was like kind of in and excited in the movie. I think that like, especially the opening sequence, but the end sequence too, where he's a grown-up priest. Something about that really strikes me as so silly and absurd and kind of fresh in a way that the middle of the movie doesn't strike me as fresh.
Mm-hmm. And there is a lot of like you said, there's that whole plot line with Dabney Coleman and Mary Steenburgen in this movie, where like she's being seduced by Dabney Coleman, and Dabney Coleman has a wig on that nobody knows is a wig, like that whole joke. And Dabney Coleman's better than this movie.
Yeah,
Has
totally
been
is.
better. Yeah. But I love Mary Steenburgen.
I was getting distracted by this movie and looking at my phone, but every time I heard her voice, I would look at the screen because she's so pretty.
And I just, Emmett. That's all I think of from.
Yeah, right. I grew up having a crush on her.
Oh
Like
my
one of
God.
my early crushes was having a crush on her from Back to the Future 3.
Yes. We can agree on that.
Yeah.
So, not your favorite of these.
I mean, it's the second best of the 4 I watched. I don't know.
Yeah.
It and Cabin Boy can go neck and neck. I've never seen Cabin Boy, but I
had never seen Cabin Boy until yesterday. So
yeah, you want to start talking about that then?
yeah. Cabin Boy. Had Cabin Boy 48% on Rotten Tomatoes, setting sail for adventure and finding out you're really just a floating disaster. Thanks, ChatGPT. Your jokes are great. The synopsis for this movie is a spoiled rich kid has plans for a Hawaiian cruise, but when they backfire, he winds up lost at sea and taken advantage of by a gang of salty old sailors who are only too willing to give the snooty guy his comeuppance. That was it.
Yeah, that's it.
I don't like Chris Elliott, and I think that's it for me.
Oh, okay. I may disagree on that. I have the same complaint I had for pretty much all these movies, that I just, and maybe it's just a time thing, but I want more jokes. I don't feel like there's a lot of written jokes, and I think there's a lot of like Looney Tunes jokes that I've seen a million times in a lot of these movies. Again, Clifford is such a interesting and like cool look, and with a comic genius behind it, and then the whole middle of the movie is like jokes I'd seen in cartoons a million times or Nickelodeon shows a million times. So I think the actual humor here I disliked, but I was also thinking that in Clifford and Cabin Boy, it seemed like in this era, wacky characters that like build into like, you know, it comes from SNL and then build into movies, you know, like Night at the Roxbury or Austin Powers, even like that they can carry the whole movie, and we don't actually have to write anything funny. It's just them being silly characters is just so funny over and over again. This is in the Pauly Shore era, where just being the weasel like is all the jokes you have to write, you know?
Yeah.
And stuff like Austin Powers, which I don't care for the Austin Powers movies, but I think that I came around on them because they are packed with written jokes.
Yeah.
Like there's two creative things in every page. And then here, Cabin Boy, I did not like. I liked Chris Elliott, but I didn't think it was very funny until like halfway through the movie, where I was like, this movie's actually like a weird fantasy film, and I didn't think that's what this movie was.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until halfway through. One, I didn't think it took place in the time period that it took place in. I always thought this was like a pirate movie.
Oh, I kind of knew that it was modern, but I mean, so silly as to not be modern. Is it not? When's it supposed to take place?
I mean, I think it is modern.
I
mean,
thought that
there's
was
cars,
the
there's a limo in it, but whenever I remember hearing about Cabin Boy, I just assume Cabin Boy, it's just like Jim Hawkins of the
I assumed it was like Son-in-Law.
Yeah.
Like that it took place a lot on a boat, but that it was kind of more normal people in a more normal situation. But this is like they just go through like a bunch of fantastical supernatural like adventures with the crazy puppetry and special effects and stuff. And I thought that was wild, and it eventually won me over, where I was like, this is a fun watch. I don't think it's very funny, but
yeah, I think like that was interesting once I finally got into it. Like, is this like a Harryhausen film or Sinbad and the Sinbad film, or a Treasure Island ripoff, or an Odyssey? Like after I started pulling in, I was like, oh, this is what they're doing here, and this is what this is.
Also fascinating. This is all filmed on a soundstage, and that gave it such a weird, dreamy quality. I was like, this can't be like a quality decision because it looks bad. But I also loved it, like, because it did feel more dreamlike when it was clearly a boat in a big pool in a room in a studio.
Yeah. It's interesting that this was going to be directed by Tim Burton.
Yeah, and it was still produced by him.
Yes. And it feels like it a little bit. Like it still feels like he's got his hands on it somewhere. Because I kept thinking of like Pee-wee or
what ended up happening, his co-production might have been a lot of advice given or resources being like, well, I know somebody who can make that look cool. You should go for that, or you should go bigger with like ice monsters and stuff. And I don't know. What a weird film. I guess like Clifford, I'm not sure that I love either of them, but I do think they're unique enough to be remembered and liked because nothing else feels quite like those two films.
Yeah, my only problem with Chris Elliott, and I've liked Chris Elliott in many things. He's great in Schitt's Creek. He's great in Scary Movie 2. He's great as a punching bag in Groundhog Day.
Yeah, totally.
But I've never. I think it's the leading man part of this, and I know he's not. He's not supposed to be charming by any
Sure.
means or anything. But like, it is kind of what you were saying about like Martin Short. Pretending to be a child for an hour and 45 minutes is like
Yeah.
him being this fancy lad for an hour
Yeah.
and 45 minutes just kind of wore on me. I was like, I'm done. Like, I cannot do this anymore. And by the
Yeah.
time I got to the end of the movie, it's like, thank God it's over.
And it's like, I think it's the shortest one. Is it like an hour, 20 minutes?
Yeah, it is the shortest hour, 20 minutes. Exactly.
And it does feel longer than that. Yeah, and so again, I just needed more like creative jokes because like everything looks good and they're all trying hard. Andy Richter is like great, but he doesn't really say anything funny. He's just again a cartoon. He's just a cartoon I've seen before. He's like a Looney Tune with like a big bear and a small shirt who gets tricked all the time because he's dumb and I don't know.
The Cali stuff was interesting and fun. Like that was probably some of the most fun I had during this movie is when he meets up with Callie and then her giant husband comes home. It's that guy that's been in like 5 movies this year. Like,
I love that guy.
Wait, I love that.
Wait, that's not our boy. That's not Chris Penn, is it?
No, you did that last time when I.
But he looks like him.
Guy. He looks like him.
Yeah.
He's the guy that takes the pills and dies in Dumb and Dumber.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the gas man.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's great.
And that's it's a funny bit. Like again, I'm not gonna laugh out loud at it, but like that he's a giant who has like this 4-legged wife, and he's like, you know what? I don't want to be a cyclops who eats sheep and sailors anymore. I'm gonna open like a hardware store in this island. Yeah, that's a funny bit. Like saying that lot's funnier than watching it, but it was at least cool looking.
I like the Chalky stuff too. That was almost gonna be my name.
Yeah.
Who is Russ Tamblyn? That's Amber Tamblin's dad. But Russ Tamblyn is probably like he was in 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. He was in West Side Story. Yeah, big musical song and dance man. And he just in this movie is as Chalky, half man, half shark, but one complete gentleman.
Which
is
I was surprised they had it in Wikipedia, but I do remember that line from an old emo band called A Static Lullaby. They had a song called that, and it was a line. Yeah.
Also, the David Letterman stuff was really funny to me.
I love the David Letterman stuff. I thought it could have been funnier, and I wish he was around more because, like that set up a funnier movie than I got. I was so happy to see him. And again, the director and Chris Elliott had been working behind the scenes at the Letterman show for a long time.
Yeah.
So this was their collaboration outside of that like full-time job to try to make something else.
And I think that specific role was like supposed to be a bunch of different people. Like I read Jack Lemmon, Martin Short, Steve Martin, Albert Brooks, Alec Baldwin, Tom Hanks were all considered for that role.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of glad that Letterman got it.
Yeah, it really fits his personality. And it was fun to see Letterman outside because I don't know how much of that kind of stuff he's ever done, if he's ever in sketches a lot or done movies. I don't remember him from anything. I just know him as David Letterman, who I love a lot. Maybe my favorite late night host overall, but
I've never appreciated him. Never appreciated him in the 90s. I didn't like Leno either, but I
didn't understand how delightfully sarcastic and kind of a curmudgeon he was, which is not what you typically get out of a late night host.
Yeah.
So we grew up in the Conan generation and I loved him the best. But then at the end of the day, like, all of his like costumey stunts, the masturbating bear kind of stuff, eventually I grew out of, and then going back, seeing David Letterman kind of hate who he's talking to and hate being there is like pretty awesome.
All of his like 80s stuff is really good. Like he has the best like interactions, whether it's Andy Kaufman or
his relationship with Norm Macdonald is pretty legendary.
Norm Macdonald.
And he used Norm Macdonald and them like used each other, partnered up to like really take it to SNL and NBC for firing Norm and just like really, really trashing NBC in pretty like petty but awesome ways.
Crispin Glover, also a great interview with Letterman. That's the one where Crispin Glover like does a karate kick at Letterman's face. Mm-hmm. And Crispin Glover's so weird anyway, but he refused to have him back on the show after that.
Well, also
But-
kind of based a problematic moment when Letterman was being blackmailed for cheating on his wife. And then he just went on national television and was like, hey, this guy's got proof that I cheated on my wife. I did that. Not a good look, but he's not blackmailing me. I'll just admit it to all of you. I cheated on my wife, you know? And he was like, and then the blackmailer's like, oh, fuck, I guess this isn't going to work. But he's just going to go in the late show and just tell everybody he did it. Yeah.
What's your thoughts on Melora Hardin?
Is that the swimmer?
Yeah.
Melora
Walters. Sorry, Melora Hardin, somebody else. Melora Walters, same thing.
I don't know her as an actor. I thought she was very cute and attractive and cool in her voice, but she didn't really have a lot to do. And then it's one of those things, it's such a hard line. Like, I like when sometimes it's genius and funny when somebody is just constantly treated bad. And then other times it just really rubs me the wrong way. So her whole arc, well, her arc isn't great, but the beginning of her arc is I'm like, well, I'm not going to sit here and laugh about how she's stuck with all these assholes who keep burning her diary and then trying to grope her and then ruin her world record. What's funny about all of that? It bothered me more than anything else. And it made me hate the people I'm supposed to like. Mm-hmm. And then later with it's the reverse Rocky where Adrian loses her virginity and stands up for herself. Then Chris Elliott does, and then she immediately is like, "Oh my God, I can't get enough of this guy anymore." It was a clear example of fuck. We don't have any women in this movie. We need some tits, or it's just going to be a dude movie. So let's do it. I liked her as an actor, but I didn't like her character very much.
Yeah.
And she gets to be gruff and stand her own and say "kiss my ass" and everything, and she gets to do that stuff, but it's just not fun to just watch her be miserable and have her whole life ruined by these people.
She's done a ton,
to be you burned my diary and ruined my world record. Now that your shirt fits a bit better, I'm just going to be your sex slave now. I'm just going to be all over you.
She kind of seems like she is supposed to be in a Tim Burton movie. She seems like a Tim Burton actor to me. I don't know why.
There's something about her look that made me actually really crush on her pretty hard, because there's something somewhat unique where a lot of women who are brought into movies to be very attractive in the 90s, something about the clothing, the hair, or just the characters or how they're written or whatever, none of it really does much for me. But I was like, oh yeah, I really crushed on this girl. I wish she had more to do. It was funnier.
And she's had quite a career. I looked her up on IMDb earlier. She's been in tons of things, and maybe they're small roles, but she's been a constant working for the last 40 years. So
yeah,
awesome.
Well, can we talk for a second too about I don't know. I had a little existential crisis when he does come back and he's leaning on the lagoon, and she's like, "Oh fuck, you're hot now." He was hot.
He was hot. Yeah, that's it. He changed. Yeah. No, I think they loosened up his shirt a little bit, and he looked hotter.
There's something about the way that shirt fit. I was like, I think he's hot too. And then I was like, fuck, Ryan, you really need to dress better. Apparently it does all of this because he's so unattractive, in so many ways throughout the whole movie. And in that one scene where they're like, let's light him right and give him well-fitting clothes, I was like, oh, I'm convinced that he's come back as a Chad.
And then he goes a little bit back to the Chris Elliott of him, but
yeah, totally.
But I don't know. It was an interesting movie. I do wish it was funnier. I wish there were more jokes. The jokes that I did weren't laugh out loud or anything. I liked all the that's a genre of film that I feel like maybe you liked better, the Sword and Sandals and
totally.
Some of that stuff, especially that Harryhausen stuff. I never really got into some of that stuff. I thought it was
some of the stuff in the movie that's like that isn't just surprising that it's there. It's uniquely good.
Yeah.
It looks good. The masthead, the woman on the prow, looks really good. The six-armed lady looks good. The ice people look good. Somebody did really great costume and design work. Also, the set work. The boat looks grody. All of the bedrooms and everything. That boat is filled with crates of onions and torn blankets and dingy things everywhere. All of the costuming. It's a really cool looking movie in that way, which is just weird that that's not the movie that you would expect it tries to be, but it's the thing it succeeded at most.
I want to see a remake. I'd see a remake of this.
Yeah.
I'd love to see
Cabin Man.
Cabin Man. Chris Elliott can reprise his role.
Girl. Who do you cast as Cabin Girl?
God, I feel like I feel like there are better women comic actors now than there are men comic actors.
Totally.
that are more willing to do the goofy shit that men like that Jim Carrey did with like his body and contorted his face. I feel like there's so many more women comic actors that are willing to make themselves look like idiots.
Who go big. I mean, who's that psycho woman that I know from Dropout and has also been on a Comedy Bang Bang a bunch? God, I'm not going to pull her name, so I shouldn't have brought her up.
Well, I think about like I know I always bring up Community, and everybody hates that I bring up Community, but I think about like Annie and Britta on that show, and that they do the most insane stuff. And it's so funny. Like they're
and not to as a side note, they're truly written as characters who, you know, like other characters like Shirley especially kind of get the short shrift, but like as female characters who there's a lot of love interest around and are written as women and are there to be very pretty and attractive, they get so many bits where they get to be wacky and funny, and then the actors, both of those actors, just go for those bits that it really fills out that show in a way that most sitcoms wouldn't.
They go big. So I would rather see Cabin Girl. I'd see Cabin
That'd be fun.
Now I'm going to talk about a movie that you haven't seen yet. You've probably read a little bit about it. Also, I got the best Chat GPT joke from it. Exit to Eden is a whopping 5% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is very low. And the tagline is where the S&M stands for seriously misguided.
Love it.
This movie is about photographer Elliot Slater has inadvertently snapped the only existing photo of elusive jewel thief Omar. When Elliot leaves for a private vacation on an S&M island, he is followed by Omar, Omar's partner Nina, and police officers Fred and Sheila. Unaware that so many people are chasing him, Elliot enjoys his stay at the resort and finds himself falling in love with the head dominatrix, Mistress Lisa. That is a bizarre. That nails it, though. That is one of the most perfect synopses.
If I had more time, I was going to watch it, and I saw how bad it supposedly was. But again, the premise is so interesting that I do kind of want to go back and still watch it.
And how they got there is even crazier. One, this is a Gary Marshall movie.
Which is awesome.
Coming off of like Pretty Woman and everything, like everybody wants to be in a Gary Marshall movie.
And we just watched a Gary Marshall movie a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. What did we watch?
Renaissance Man.
That's right. But yeah, everybody wants to be in this. And Dana Delaney, like everybody was like, you got to do this. It's going to put you to Julia Roberts status.
Yeah.
This movie's based on an Anne Rice book.
Which is fascinating too.
Which is the
I guess
book.
It's not crazy that like the woman who wrote like a big vampire story wouldn't also be a little like 50 Shades of Grey too. Like,
well, she has like a bunch of these, and like she has an Sleeping Beauty series that's all about it's all erotica, told from the Sleeping Beauty fairy tale. So she's got a lot of these. She wrote this book, Exit to Eden, under pseudonym Anne Rampling or something like that. But book is only about the S&M island, and the book is only about the photographer, and there is no subplot with jewel thieves and pictures and cops. And they were just like, we're going to make this it's not a funny book at all. It's an Anne Rice book. And they just were like, we got to make this comical. I got to get my buddy Hector Elizondo in here. That's one of the funny things in the credits, and it says, and as always, Hector Elizondo.
That's right. He's credited that way. I saw that.
Yeah. This movie's bonkers. Like, truly not good.
Let me read what Roger Ebert wrote about it.
Yeah.
On the first page of my notes, I wrote start slow. On the second page, I wrote boring. On the third page, I wrote endless. On the fourth page, I wrote bite-sized shredded wheat, skim milk, cantaloupe, frozen peas, toilet paper, salad stuff, pick up laundry. That's the first part of it. Then later on, it says this movie is not only dumb and ill-constructed, but tragically miscast. The actors look so uncomfortable they could be experiencing alarming intestinal symptoms. And then Anne Rice recently took out a 2-page spread in Variety and the New York Times to announce that she has seen the film Interview with the Vampire and thinks it is a masterpiece. I don't think we should look for her ad about Exit to Eden, not even in the classifieds. You just had like so many roasts in one review on this thing.
The best part of this movie is Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh yeah, that's right. She's there. I love
Yeah,
Rosie.
Rosie's great in this. She also provides very bad narration that was needed though. Like it's
Yeah.
that bad of a movie that it needed that narration over it to
Mhm.
make it even work and be comprehensible. Paul Mercurio, who I think is he's Australian and is coming off of Strictly Ballroom with Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah.
Um, again thought this was going to be like the next big thing for him. He was a hottie in that movie, and it did not do what it was supposed to do. He's not good in this. He looks uncomfortable in this movie at all times. And he's the main character.
Too, is that like they can't sell the kinkiness of it because the actors feel uncomfortable with the BDSM stuff. So it can be a comedy, but if it's also not like a little bit titillating, then that like I don't know, it ends up being a weird shot because then you're asking like a 1994 audience to be like, "Ooh, let's watch something a little saucy," and then be like turned off by it, and then they're like, "Well, why did we take this risk just to like be let down?"
And I see the bones of something good here. You could even make this movie a comedy and make it still work, but like it gets real messy with the cop stuff and like the jewel thief and them like it's trying a lot of this like slapstick of, oh, you just missed this guy, he was just here. Like
when you said jewel thief, I could already imagine that there's like a lot of Scooby-Doo like near misses that go on,
and like the actors in it, like I don't know, I think they cast the people they did because they were like, okay, we're gonna get Amon to be in this. She's a beautiful supermodel, she's married to David Bowie, let's get her in here, and she's going to be a jewel thief that kills people. She's terrible.
Yeah.
They got the bad guy, this British character actor. I don't remember his name, but he's the bad guy from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 in this movie. It's a weird plot. Like he's like, nobody has a picture of me that has ever existed, and nobody can have that ever. And he wears disguises all the time. So what's the fucking point? Like, he like changes his eye color and everything.
Yeah, it just seems like so much. Like they should have just really like written half of that better. It sounds like.
But like I really like the Rosie O'Donnell stuff because she ends up coming in kind of undercover, as like she's an undercover cop, but she is a participant in the island stuff. So she's there as a mistress, and she's getting served by all these people that are the slaves or whatever. They're I think they call them servants. I can't remember what it is, but she's really funny and leads to some funny scenes with her. And she's talked openly about how much this movie was terrible and everything. But I was like, man, I was into some Rosie.
Yeah.
Like it just because of like the confidence thing, and like she's walking around in thigh highs and like this leather get up and everything. And she's just kind of commanding the screen when she's on there.
Yeah.
One of my favorite scenes is between her and Dana Delaney in this, and I think Dana Delaney is the most comfortable in the film.
Yeah.
She has no problem getting naked. She has no problem highlighting like what the BDSM culture is about. Everything. She was really into it. You could tell that she was like, "This is my star making moment. I'm gonna be awesome in this," and kind of lost on the plot and everything kind of went the wrong way. They did a shootout. They did a sex scene. Let me tell you this real quick.
No,
they do a sex scene and a shootout at Terra from Gone with the Wind.
Okay.
Random. It like they go to New Orleans and they're like, let's go tour Terra. And that's when like the climax of the movie or the end of the movie happened. Like everything just kind of boils down to that. So
yeah, that's crazy. It just seems like too much. Do you think the movie ran away from the BDSM thing a bit, or do you think that they like they swang at the fence? Do you think that like I bet like in the development, the idea of being a little edgy with that stuff was like a big seller, and then in the actual shooting and production, they were scared, and then was like, what if we made this more of a crime romp?
Yeah, I think that had to have happened because
it sounds like
it seems very surface level in the BDSM stuff. Not that I'm a pro or anything about it, but you compared to like a 50 Shades or something like that. I know people hate 50 Shades that are into that community and stuff, but like it still felt like they were giving you more information about what this world is, and like you even have characters like Dan Aykroyd's character, who's very much like, oh, I hate women. I hate when women talk about their periods, and like that's all Dan Aykroyd's in this movie to do is be like, oh, menstruation, like that. It's wild and
like
weird.
that movie has to be beyond that kind of character to like work. So yeah, it sounds like they gave like a pamphlet about BDSM, but they didn't actually like experience in the humanity, because it could be both like really funny and interesting to see like a kind of closeted person like all of a sudden, like it can be funny for them to be like, oh my God, I need you to whip me. Like I need that. I'm sick of being in control. I'm sick of running the house, that kind of thing. And then that could like freak another partner out until they like, you know, I don't know. Like there's a lot of like comedy that could be like really thoughtful through the psychology of like BDSM. But it sounds like that there was no real character arcs that mattered.
The best scene in the, well, probably the best interaction in the movie is between Dana Delaney and Rosie O'Donnell, and they're having like a women's tea to get together and like learn more. And like Rosie O'Donnell's able to get jokes or like joke around, but also that's where you get most of your explanation about the dominant, submissive stuff. And like Rosie O'Donnell's doing it as like a lay person who's not as in or doesn't know all this stuff and is really curious about it. And they get the most like interaction. But by the end of the movie, you're expected to believe that within 3 days of these people being, it's one of those things where this guy has fallen in love with her. Rosie O'Donnell is is Dana Delaney's best friend. Dan Aykroyd is suddenly accepting of women except for their menstruation. And he bought his wife a Hitachi wand, who was his real wife in real life in the movie. It's interesting. I saw a proper way to eat a croissant in this movie.
Oh, what is that?
So yeah, well, yes. So toward the end of the movie, he brings her back to her room, a famous, New Orleans croissant from the French Quarter. And she's like, oh my God, thank you. I love you and all this stuff. And he's like, hold on. I brought a stick of butter and a little jar of cinnamon. And he puts the butter on the croissant, and then he puts butter on her nipple. And then he sprinkles the cinnamon on the croissant, and then he sprinkles the cinnamon on her nipple, and then he goes to town on her nipple. And then she's just like kicked back eating this croissant.
That sounds pretty hot.
Right? Yeah. That was supposedly way more in depth in the book and way more insertion in the book with the butter and the cinnamon and food in general.
Insertion. I feel like the croissant and butter is not for insertion.
And she even says, "Have you seen Last Tango in Paris?" in the movie.
Oh yeah. Ugh. That's actually like a kind of problematic reference, but yeah. Jesus.
I want everybody on the planet to watch this movie.
All right, I will. I'll commit to watching it. I did already find it. I just when I finished Airheads, I was like, well, I got 1 hour before the pod or an hour 15 minutes. I don't have time to watch the whole thing.
Yeah. Even in that time frame, you could have gotten it. You got everything. Anything else? Okay, so if you're ranking them, you're going Airheads, Cabin Boy, Clifford.
I'm going Cabin Boy over Clifford, I think, actually. And I didn't think I felt that way until you asked me. I think Clifford's middle is just too boring for me.
Yeah, we have the same top 3 out of them, and then I think Cops and Robertsons, and then Exit to Eden. You could put it.
Exit to Eden is the worst.
Yeah, it's like the plot is incoherent. Like,
that does suck as far as being the worst. But it sounds like based on what you said, like Cops and Robertson seems unwatchable to me, but Exit to Eden seems like you're like, I want people to watch it. It's so fucking weird and crazy. So I might mix those around based on your description of the one. But that's pretty much the same. The same like tiers, the 3 tiers I'd put those in.
Yeah.
I think I'll watch Airheads again before I die. Like I think I'll at some point I'll be like, oh fuck yeah, it's on a streaming service or something. Like I'm gonna click on that.
I know people that love Cabin Boy and rep Cabin Boy till they die.
I've known a lot of people that love Cabin Boy, so I was a little surprised by it being what it was.
So maybe if I watch Cabin Boy with the right audience, I might get more enjoyment out of it and like hear people quoting it or quoting whatever lines that they think are really funny in it. Because that's the thing that I was waiting on, like some lines that were going to stick out to me as like, oh, this is really, really funny.
That's what I want. I wanted the words that were being said to be more funny and less obvious in all of these movies.
Because like I've seen really bad movies, and one of them you've probably seen Almost Heroes.
No, I haven't.
Chris Farley, Matthew Perry movie. It's bad. It's not a good movie. And it's
Yeah.
a take on like a Lewis and Clark movie story. But like I quote that with people often, and it has at least some lines that I'm like, yeah, that's funny, but it is not a good movie.
Right. Yeah. And that might just be my take with comedy. I mean, to one of your points, like I didn't get to watch it with my partner, but like I bet I would have had more fun if I was watching it with anybody, because then we could like just laugh at how bad a thing is, and that can actually it can be a more fun experience with comedy than watching comedy alone. And I do think lines are better because again in Clifford there was just a few like glimpses of what I fell in love with Martin Short for, which was his kind of like behind a innocent smile, like a biting humor, and there was only a few of those. And I do think that in Airheads, even though they weren't the funniest lines in the world, there was so much written stuff of like their insults, like "oh, shut up, butt chugger." Like it was just like a lot of like it was like a lot of bad, dumb insults, a lot of gay, like homophobic stuff in there too. But like every time they wanted to insult Milo, they all had completely different like words for it, and then that at least was entertaining more than just calling him a sellout over and over and over again. So yeah, I kind of need zingers.
Pretty sure I heard the R word a couple times at Airheads too.
I heard it once, and then it made me. I was like, man, I wish I could go back. Maybe you can do it for 1995, but you should have a running R word counter.
I should go back and just see how many times it was used.
I mean, so far, I think. I mean, what? It was only in Forrest Gump once or twice, but it was in. I think it was in Reality Bites like 3 times.
Yes,
that might be the winner this year.
And I wonder if any of the kids' movies that we watched had it.
Yeah.
Because
Pulp Fiction might have had it so much but I just didn't notice it because.
He definitely. Bruce Willis does say it a couple times to his girlfriend in Pulp Fiction. So.
Oh yeah, he's telling a story like, no, he's not that. He's the like. Yeah. Anyways, I will add. I've been playing the Pulp Fiction pinball machine a lot, which has 150 individual quotes from the movie.
Oh wow!
And I'm not good enough to reach them all, but I'm getting better.
If you beat it, does it change your opinion of the movie?
Oh, do you want a couple minutes about how they like make this machine? It's a very beautifully designed machine, but there's like to get to every pinball machine has a wizard mode, and the wizard mode is divine intervention, and between each mode in the wizard mode, it plays quotes from the scene where the bullets miss John Travolta, right? That's pretty cool. There's a pawn shop multi-ball where like you hear quotes from the Gimp if you lock 3 balls in the pawn shop. Briefcase Boogie's another multi-ball. But then there's twist contests. I think the cleverest thing they do is some pinball machines have a magnet which will make the ball go all crazy. And in the middle of the machine is a big gun and like some lightning bolts coming off of it and a bullseye with the magnet, so that when you trigger that mode, the magnet like mimics the part where the bullets miss them. Like, God came down and moved those bullets or whatever. So they use pinball mechanics to like actually reference the movie because like the ball's going in all weird directions. It's pretty dope.
Is that regarded as like a really good pinball?
I think from my deep dive into pinball in the past few years, certainly not like top 100 machine of all time probably, but not like top 10. The people who designed it, the sound designer and the art designer, like one of them came out of retirement and they're considered legends. I think it's a little too hard for me at my level. Like it's just too difficult to get to modes or to feel like I'm getting better. Other pinball machines, I can be better at pinball and slap and like eventually get to a higher score. But to like make anything cool happen on this machine, I have to like be very, very good for a whole game. But it is sexy. I love that machine. And it makes me think about our podcast because I watched it this year for the pod. And then, there's just so many little references and quotes all the time. You collect the characters in a scoop at the top, and it's like 5 characters: Marcellus, John Travolta, Uma, and then it's Harvey Keitel and Jimmy, Quentin Tarantino. So like you plunge the ball and it lands in a scoop, and then you hear Quentin Tarantino be like, "Now I'm gonna go get my coffee. I don't want any of you guys here when I get back."
I'm surprised it doesn't say the N-word in there.
There are no N-words. There is. Well, the only offensive thing is when you drain, sometimes you hear John Travolta go, "Well, that's a jip." And then there is an adult mode that we don't have turned on. So you hear a lot of motherfuckers and dames, but they're all bleeped out.
Okay. Very interesting. No, I used to listen to a podcast that talked about pinball very lovingly.
Oh,
And
yeah?
the two hosts got really, really into pinball. It was the guy that married Topanga, Jensen
Yes.
Karp.
Jensen
Yeah,
Karp, yeah.
his old podcast. It's his buddy that liked um, the pinball stuff more. Like
I'm getting into it. I've been watching more content online, and because of where I work, I have the keys to the machine, and I give myself a bunch of free credits.
Awesome.
For Pulp Fiction and an older machine called Aladdin's Castle. I'm excited because the place I work has 2 new machines that I haven't played yet, a Led Zeppelin machine and then like a riverboat gambling machine.
Okay.
Where there's like those are a cartoonish woman who goes, "Okay, big spender," like over and over again.
There's this antique store that's like an hour away from me, but their whole thing is they host pinball tournaments there.
Mhm.
They have tons of these old machines, strictly pinball stuff. So it's pretty cool. I want to get that Addams Family.
That's a great machine. That's a beloved machine. Yeah.
That's
Nowadays, Jaws and Godzilla are huge. The John Wick machine's pretty cool, and I was told we were getting it, but I don't think we are. But yeah, me and my friends go to a pinball bar sometimes late at night because it's kind of empty and stays open late, and it's got a million machines. But if you're paying for every game, it's hard to get good. So having a free machine and then not caring if I do well that game, I just learn to catch the ball and I just practice specific shots over and over again. Try to put some drills in to see if I can like get my skills up. But I'm pretty obsessed.
I think that's great. I hope to see you on the circuit someday.
One day they have competitive pinball here.
I know they have pinball. Competitive pinball is blowing up again. It used to be illegal.
My girlfriend is a couple years ago was super into it, so she got me into it. She doesn't play as much anymore, but she was the second highest female rated player in Tennessee at some point.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
My ass. I've gotten so much better, and she still kicks my ass like 4 games out of 5.
I hope they add it to the Olympics. Is what Joe said.
That would be dope.
It would be better than breaking.
The only way I could maybe ever get there, and it'd be my best chance.
Anyway. Have you watched anything recently that?
Nope. Ken Burns, a rewatch of Deadwood with my partner, and then it's just been a lot of YouTube risk and pinball. Still, I think is what I've been into.
What Ken Burns you watching?
Baseball.
Oh,
she's really into baseball. I don't like baseball, but I love Ken Burns, so that I've watched all of baseball, Ken Burns baseball twice. Nice. So we fall asleep to that a lot. We fall asleep to Deadwood or Dropout. Those are like 3 go-tos. But movie-wise, no movies. I was really sick last weekend, and I was like, wait, I forgot that there was like 16 seasons of It's Always Sunny. I missed like 8 of them. So it's kind of like going through those. They're not great, but I guess they're fun to watch.
There's, especially with some of those later seasons, there's like 1 or 2 episodes a season that are really awesome, and then the rest of it is just not good at all. And the even later you go, it is very few. Then you're like scenes. The scene is really good. The rest of the show is kind of not.
I'm fascinated by it. I want to get to the end because every time I kept hearing like friend groups be like, "Yeah, do you see the new It's Always Sunny?" I'm like, "There's more. What are they doing over there?"
Yeah.
And so I don't expect it to be like surprising or amazing, but I just want to see the evolution because it went on so long. It's funny. I'm in the middle era now. Which the first episode in many seasons that blew me away was one my girlfriend was talking about, but they kind of do the Birdman thing, but it's Charlie, the health inspector's coming.
It's a good episode.
Charlie saving the day, and I was like, this episode is awesome. It's the first great episode I've seen in like 5 seasons. But so far, my assumption is kind of correct, where it was pretty genius for 4 seasons, and then it fell into being like just going through the motions with itself. I'm also in the era that like politically the country was in, where like. It must be Trump stuff, I guess, but like where even It's Always Sunny wants to make a whole episode about explaining how gun laws work to me. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I was there. I listened to podcasts. Like, I don't need It's Always Sunny to do this. But then like there was like a few years there when everything was doing that. Like everything ended up being like, we're going to do our own jokes and be our own characters. But also we're going to make like a PSA out of like a specific like political issue. And TV shows didn't do that before. And then they all did it all the time. And then now they do it like half the time.
Yeah, I know what season you're talking about, especially when it came to like the Trump stuff in 2016, which is crazy that it was that long ago. But there's some stuff that they do, like that's one of those seasons that I'm talking about where it's like, one, they are not talking about some political issue, and then it's just like them doing antics or getting into trouble, like the stuff that made Sunny funny.
Well, and then sometimes when they are political, sometimes the dumbass characters are like the bad guys, and that's supposed to show the lesson. And then other times it'll be like Dennis and Dee be like, well, clearly we're not idiots who think that like guns should be this and that and that. And I'm like, all right, well, pick a lane, I guess. I'm not offended by it at all, but I also like don't need that for my It's Always Sunny. And it definitely brought me back to like a time period when everybody, I mean, it's not like it's changed completely, but there was definitely a few years there where everybody was talking about like politics, political policies that they learned on podcast all the time, even in your FX comedy shows. And I was like, this is so weird to see now.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. And some of this, like, I will say I enjoy some of the later season episodes. Like, there are some of those later season episodes that I still quote and I still think of fondly. Some of the late ones that we're into now are not great. Like, they go to Ireland for an entire season. I can't tell you one thing about that season except for the ending, because it's like there's this like very dramatic part where Charlie is carrying his dad up a mountain, his dead dad up a mountain. It's very it's super, like, they'll do that every once in a while. They'll put on like, hey, we can act too. We can do these big dramatic moments.
Oh, interesting. I haven't seen a lot of that yet, but
yeah, there's a couple of those that are coming out. There's a good Mac season, Mac stuff that comes out.
I know they go through. I know some of the arcs they go through, and that's interesting. But it's clearly like a show that kept being popular and was so cheap to make.
Yeah.
And that they could probably film a whole episode in like 2 days. You know, they could just go up, be themselves, know their lines, and just knock scenes out because they embody those characters so well. And then it does like that Birdman Health Inspector episode was so good, and it went right back to kind of average. And I was like, all right, well, like, I guess the writing room probably is like, hey, here's like 2 or 3 like kind of big production things. We'll go back to doing the musical stuff over here. Then we'll have this episode that we're gonna do in a weird way, and then we have like a bunch of just like run-of-the-mill monster of the weeks, you know, in between, and that'll make our fan base happy enough and FX happy enough. So, anyways, I had like a 3-day fever, and I just watched a shit ton of that.
I did that with Brooklyn Nine-Nine a couple weeks back, where I was just like, I'm just gonna crank through a bunch of these episodes because
worth it.
Had a good time. Yeah, I like Brooklyn Nine. It's fine.
For the first couple seasons, they were fun enough. It was like The Office gets watered down a little more every time they do it, but yeah, funny enough cast.
Yeah. I love Joe Latrulio. I think he's just great.
Yeah, I love that guy.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And he deserved having that space. He was working so hard in so many things.
Yeah, the only other things besides trying to catch up on, I know we were going to talk about it later about like in Discord about when we're going to do the Coen Brothers stuff. So I've been rewatching those. I'm almost caught up on all the Coen Brothers movies. I'm almost through all the ones that they did together. And now I'm going to get into the ones that they did separately.
Yeah, I actually looked at it today and made a list of them all, and kind of just took a few minutes to see where I could stream most of them.
But I just watched some 2024 movies recently. Immaculate, which is a ripoff, I guess, of The Omen. But it's like sexy nurses or sexy nuns,
Okay.
and one of them, gets pregnant and is birthing the next Jesus. It was fine. There's some pretty crazy moments in it, and it's got Sydney Sweeney, who's like the hot shit right now. And then I watched Furiosa, and I really loved Furiosa a lot. And
I did watch that, actually.
You watched Furiosa?
Yeah.
I enjoyed the heck out of that movie. Mm-hmm. That movie was fun, and I saw a lot of people were kind of disappointed. It's not a Mad Max movie. It's about Furiosa,
a woman.
But no, I love the world building it did on Fury Road, and like it made me really interested in that world. Stuff that I don't feel like the earlier Mad Max movies do a lot of, and they're loved and like, but there's not a lot of.
I kind of rewatched. I wasn't paying full attention, but I rewatched every Mad Max movie before that. I had never seen Fury Road until a few months ago, but I rewatched the original trilogy because like they were like, Furiosa's coming out tomorrow or something. The original Mad Max movies, they just kind of like revamp the world every time, but they're in individual like different aspects. So I like the idea of a Mad Max world because I could see that being like, I could see it being a TV show, a comic book. I think it would be cooler to have more like Fury Road world building. But yeah, between what they did in Furiosa with like the 3 cities and like the politics between them, and then it's pretty great. I think I should rewatch it. I think I did have a fever when I watched it, so it's a little blurry to me, but that was everything I wanted out of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. So one of my top movies of this year. Probably it's up there for me. I really enjoyed that movie.
Well, Miller clearly knows how to direct those movies. When he came back with Fury Road, it was just, I mean, out of the park.
And I think that guy's old too. Like,
Gotta be.
he's like Ridley Scott old.
I mean, when did Mad Max come out? Fucking, was it in the 70s?
Maybe like 79, maybe.
Yeah, late 70s or early 80s. So yeah, it's been a while.
But that was fun. That was fun for me to get excited about. I hadn't seen it. Was 79, by the way. We were right.
Okay.
Which is crazy that it spanned this long. Yeah, he's been around forever.
Yeah, that movie's 45 years old now. Yeah.
Wow.
That's insane.
That is insane. Well, tomorrow we're actually going to be back here. We're doing a little bit of a late one just because of traveling, and there's been a bunch of stuff going on here. But we're talking to Alyssa tomorrow about the movie Priscilla, The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. Did you watch it?
I haven't. I'm going to make a big effort to. It's been on my list for a long time. It's a 1001 movie. I'd seen it referenced in so many different things, whether it's like musical list or trans list or just great movie lists. So, and it's fascinated me as an Australian, like, drag/trans, like musical movie. All of that seems dope to me. So I was excited to watch it, and I didn't have time. And then when I saw that you were postponing the podcast, I'm like, I'm going to make it a point. I don't think I'll be able to be in chat for only but half of it, but
yeah, that's fine. Well, I am excited. I hope other people can get a chance to watch it. It is definitely a fun watch, and we've had a unique year for like Australian films. We had Sirens come out, Muriel's Wedding.
Yeah.
I'll even throw in New Zealand with the Heavenly Creatures, Peter Jackson movie that we didn't get to talk about.
I mean, you're right. That part of the world which has cinema sometimes that like gets over to us, and then for long stretches doesn't. It's kind of big for them.
Yeah, so it's exciting. We are doing The Ref this Sunday. Dennis Leary movie. I think Kevin Spacey's in that movie too. That'll be interesting to talk about. But it's pretty highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes and has good reviews. So I'm looking forward to watching that. I've never seen that one.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
But our next month theme that we're going to be doing is called Sports. And it's going to be all sports movies from the year 1994 that aren't just quite good enough. The Air Up There with Kevin Bacon, Blue Chips has some NBA players in that. 8 Seconds about bull riding and Lane Frost, Luke Perry, classic in the Waits household when I was a kid.
Okay.
The Scout starring Albert Brooks and Brendan Fraser.
Real quick. I love The Scout. What a weird fucking movie that I watched over and over and over again on TV. So I'm excited about that one.
What's the guy's name? I can't think of his name. It's like something Ponderosa or something like that. It's
the player's name. Yeah,
I can't really. And then Above the Rim. So we've got 3 basketball movies, 1 bull riding movie, and 1 baseball movie in here. So that's what we're going to be talking about, I think. And we're going to talk. I think it's September 25th is the day that we'll be talking about that one. We'll do another one of these here. And anybody is welcome. Ryan, obviously, I always love when you come on here and do these with me. So
yeah, but chat, show up.
Show up. Yeah, please, for real. But thank you, Ryan, for doing this and watching these movies with me. Please watch Exit to Eden so we can talk about it later.
Will do.
I'll talk to y'all later.